My name is Ryan and I'm back with a spoiler-free review of Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. So to start off, this book is essentially about a girl named Bree who has unexpectedly lost her mom, and in order to kind of escape from her grief and life at home without her mom, she ends up joining this early college program at the University of North Carolina, I believe, at Chapel Hill. And at this school, she sees this demon sort of creature at a party and ends up getting wrapped into a secret society full of magic and demons and all that kind of stuff, and the story takes off from there. So to start off, I just want to start by talking about some of the magic in this world. The magic and the world in this book are based on King Arthur and Arthurian legends, so if you're a fan of that stuff, you might enjoy this book. And I am not someone who's very familiar with Arthurian legends, so I know really what none of those references mean. And for a bit, I thought that that would hinder my enjoyment of the story, but as we'll see later, it really didn't. So if that's something that's holding you up about reading this book, I would suggest still going for it and giving it a try, because I don't really understand Arthurian legend stuff, but I still found myself loving this. In addition to the magic, I also want to talk about some of our main characters. At the front of this book, we have Bree, and I loved her. I loved the aspects of her that we get as she deals with the grief of her mom, and I love that she's so driven. She's sort of this fresh take on the bold, impulsive heroine in YA fantasy, but she's not stupid. She's just this girl that has been thrust into this situation, and sometimes she makes really impulsive decisions, and I just ended up really enjoying her. In addition to her, we also have Nick, and he's kind of our golden boy of the secret order. He's kind of this guy that's really popular and everyone loves him, and in the secret magical order, everyone sort of bows down to him. And he, of course, is Bree's love interest. And I actually ended up liking him as well. I normally don't go for, the nice characters or the characters that I think are goody-goodies. But I actually ended up really enjoying him. I thought that he was really supportive, and he was absent for a good portion of this book, but I thought that that made sense for the plot, and I'm excited to see what we get from him in the future. And last, I want to talk about a character named Sel, and he is this Merlin who's this spellcaster of the order, and he has been tasked with being bonded to and protecting Nick for life. And he is eventually another one of Bree's love interests. And I like that Sel is this fresh take on the bad boy character. In the beginning, he's really grumpy and broody, and he's kind of mean to Bree, but in the end there's kind of a reason, and he explains why he was mean to her, and they move forward from there and end up forming a nice bond that I actually really enjoyed and I wasn't expecting to. So yeah, I just really loved the dynamic of these characters and what they had with each other, and I'm excited for more in the future if there's more books. Next, I want to just talk about some of the things that I loved in this book. We get a lot of societal talk and social commentary in this book. This book does take place in the South, so this book talks a lot about Bree's experience as a Black woman and how that affects her life, especially in the South, and especially in academic places where historically white people have held the majority of the power. We get discussions on Bree's experience, with having to care for her hair and no one understanding why she has to do it differently than those around her, or the microaggressions that she faces, such as, authority figures thinking that she has an attitude when she doesn't. She just is questioning why they're treating her like that. And I really loved those aspects of this book. I felt that it made Bree seem like a very real character because she's talking about real things that happen to real people in the world, even though this is a fantasy story. And I just think that the way that the real world elements were tied into the fantastical elements was just done so well. I also loved how that was tied into the magic because in addition to the Arthurian legend of this book, we get another magic system in here called rootcraft, which is basically just the natural order or like the natural magic of the world. And the way it's used is that you simply ask the natural forces and you ask your ancestors to help you with this magic. And this comes into play because Bree doesn't really know her ancestors, so she doesn't really know the magic she was supposed to have grown up with. In addition, we also get a discussion on colonialism and how the rootcraft is like the natural magic and the Arthurian side of it is just based on taking magic when it doesn't belong to you. And we get consequences when magic is stolen from people, and I loved seeing that. I think it has some really great real world applications, and I thought that that was expertly done in this. Next, I want to talk about the grief element of this. At the start of this story, Bree has just unexpectedly lost her mom, and this is kind of the story of her trying to figure out what happened and learning that the magic is tied to her mom in ways that she wasn't expecting. I really enjoyed the grief element in here. I liked that her mom is still this really strong presence, and we do get to see that mother-daughter bond even though her mom is gone. There were moments of this book that were so emotional to read because of the grief element. And I loved that it talked about, you know, a before and after Bree, of a before Bree when everything was happy and she had her mom, and then there's this point when her mom died, and then there's after Bree and everything's kind of falling apart. That's a dynamic that I love when books explore. This book was no different. I absolutely loved it in this book. The next thing I want to talk about is just how diverse this book is. Not only do we get Bree as a Black main character and it informs how she looks at the world and it's not just brushed aside, we also get several queer characters in this book. There's a non-binary side character, and the thing that I really love about this is that there's a conversation in this book between Bree and the non-binary character where they talk about how they are both seen as something that is other in society. But even with that, the oppression that they face is not the same thing. Next, not only does this book have a ton of important discussions like I've been saying, it was also just so much fun. We get a lot of action scenes, a lot of magical scenes, a lot of demon fights, and it just felt like something that was so classic, and it felt like just such a classic urban fantasy. I think one of the things that really did it for me in this book was the way that it subverts a lot of tropes. I talked before on how we have a love triangle in here, but I think the love triangle really works and all of the characters have chemistry with each other, and the narrative isn't just gunning for one option and just throwing in a love triangle for fun. There's the bad boy trope in here, but unlike some other books, he's not a bad boy for no reason, and his explanation for being mean is explained, and they move through it after that, and he apologizes. There's also the chosen one trope in here, but the chosen one isn't exactly who you would think the chosen one is. And there's also a little bit of insta-love in here, and normally that would turn me off, and it did for a while. But by the time the book was over and I was able to put that insta-love in context, and you'll get what I mean by this by the end of the book, I felt like it was warranted. There's just something about fate behind the insta-love. And lastly, really the only cons that I have are just that I think the beginning was a little slow and meandering at first, and it took a long time for me to really dive into some of the magic and how that worked, just because I'm not really familiar with Arthurian legend stuff, but in the end I don't really think it took much away from the story. There were just times when I didn't really know what was going on. But with all of that, I ended up really enjoying this book way more than I thought I would, and I am absolutely looking to continue with the series if more books ever come out, and I just really enjoyed this, and I ended up rating it 4 stars. But that's all that I have for you today. Hopefully I'll see you soon with another video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to have a good day. Bye!